She's going to read it in Spanish, so people should, of course, keep on their English channel.
Ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity in this august assembly to talk about the case of my nephew, Leopoldo Lopez. My name is Julietta Lopez, and I am the aunt of Mr. Leopoldo Lopez, who is a Venezuelan political leader. Since the 18th of February, has been detained arbitrarily and has been isolated in very difficult conditions in a military prison in Venezuela. And this for having exercised his right to the freedom of speech and having joined together along with other political leaders and having conducted a peaceful demonstration in the street. And for this reason, President Nicolás Maduro has ordered the court to set out a writ of arrest for him and charging him with the following: homicide, terrorism, damage to public property, setting fire to property, and crime and criminal offenses. 15 soldiers after this of the Bolivarian forces carrying war weapons and hoods raised the residence of Mr. Lopez and his father with the intention of detaining him. Faced with such accusations and the attack on his physical integrity and that of his family, Mr. Lopez voluntarily appeared before the courts on February 18th and declared that he felt that he was totally innocent. And the trial was set for the very next day. And at 10:30 at night only, after he waited for 12 hours, he was brought to a mobile trial, before a military court. And he was not given the right to a trial that he was entitled to as a civilian. The first charges against him were canceled, that is, those of terrorism and homicide, considering them to be out of proportion. But his charges of damage to public property and instigation to crime were kept, although there is no evidence to support this. There is no reason to deprive him of his liberty, since he went to the courts voluntarily. His trial should be carried out in freedom because he handed himself over voluntarily, and therefore there is no question of his escaping. Moreover, it is illegal for a civilian citizen to be isolated in a military prison. The sentence should be given publicly, and so far this has not been the case. But this has taken place within a prison by military court. He has direct communication for the time being. He has communication with his family and with his lawyers, and he has allowed brief visits. Leopoldo Lopez supported a pacific movement of students and participated in a national Pacific demonstration against the absurd situation the country is experiencing due to a broken government that has caused hunger and helplessness. Now, it is one of the most desperate countries in the world. Staples are being deprived of the people, and there is constant pressure against free trade. There is great corruption, and there is some great squandering of the resources coming from petrol. And now the country is suffering from this, and this has led to all the events that we know of for the past 2 weeks. But it is not Mr. Lopez that had sent people out to the streets. People took to the streets by themselves to protest against these disproportional events. So the Venezuelan constitution stipulates that citizens have the right to demonstrate peacefully without the use of weapons, according to the law. And the same article prohibits the use of firearms and toxic substances in controlling peaceful demonstration, which the government has sidelined and ignored. And he has asked me to transmit this message to you. Dictatorships are oppressing dissidents, and they're taking prisoners of their dissidents. The emperor has no clothes. I'd like to thank you for your kind attention. And please help us to free my nephew and save my country, my homeland, Venezuela. Thank you.
Julietta, thank you very much for your powerful words. And speaking on behalf of UN Watch, as we said before, I assure you that we will do what we can to make sure that the case of your nephew and for the people of Venezuela will be in the spotlight here in Geneva at the United Nations Human Rights Council. Sadly, Venezuela was about a year ago elected as a member of the Human Rights Council. They should be held accountable. It hasn't happened yet. We will call for them to be held accountable and for justice. Gracias. But before we break for lunch, just one final item. We have a video that should be ready. One of our supporters who couldn't be here today is Dr. Mukesh Kapila. You may all know the famous case of General Romeo Dallaire, the UN peacekeeper who sounded the alarm in Rwanda 10 years ago and whose voice tragically went unheeded. Around the same time, well, 10 years after that rather, in Darfur, the UN coordinator of humanitarian affairs was Dr. Mukesh Kapila. He saw the genocide happening and he cried out, and his organization, as he tells the story, did not listen. He has a book. He couldn't be here today, but he has a book that's for sale, which is for sale outside at the entrance, and we have a 2-minute video about the book, which you can watch now.
We knew from day one what was going on. Hardly a day would go by without an email report being sent to New York detailing the latest incident, including time, place. Very often we even knew which army unit was responsible.
My country, my country, my country.
The reaction from New York, there was no reaction. It is as if the reports disappeared into a black hole. I've been unfortunate in somehow becoming a student of genocide. Having witnessed at first hand Rwanda, Srebrenica, in my view, those who stand by and don't even try to do something are almost as culpable as those who stick the knife in or who pull the trigger. I started on a round of diplomacy, and every capital had access to intelligence information that I did not have, and yet they were doing nothing. So there was only one thing left, and that was tell the story as I knew it to anyone who would listen, anywhere in the world. And there's only one way to do that, and that is through the media. And I knew that this would be the end of my career anyway. It was cold, calculated fury that was driving me towards the end, because there's nothing to lose, because everything had been lost, most of all the lives. And once the genie was out of the bottle, there was no going back. Not a single diplomat has been brought to account for the failure to act. In fact, many of them were promoted. When those who are in charge of institutions, charged with the responsibility to prevent and protect, fail in that duty, and there is no accountability for it, then the Darfur will happen again. And it'll happen again, and it'll happen again, and it'll happen again.
The land around now is completely scorched, as you can see, and the country depopulated. This is scorched earth policy. This is ethnic cleansing. This is a crime against humanity.
Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, the book is available for sale at the entrance. It's been a very moving and powerful session this morning. It's a lot to think about. We now have a break for about an hour and a half. We're back at 2:30 after lunch. Please be back at 2:30 for our next sessions. And thank you very much. Bon appétit.